Hello. Welcome to mine and Snakey's top horror movie per decade since the 20s until the 10s, the 2010s. These are all just opinions, of course, and I might be missing something, so let me know if I missed anything. So, 1920, Nosferatu. To be honest with you, Snakey's giving me the evil eye right now. To be honest with you, I don't think it's very good. I think there's some cool shots in it. That's about the only thing it has going for it. But the 20s is a difficult time to choose from. Silent movies have a disadvantage, I feel like, and that's an opinion. And I know some people like it that way and like the atmospheric qualities. And it is semi-atmospheric, but some of the stuff is not a good kind of atmosphere, kind of like a spring atmosphere, and that's not really what you want in a horror movie. Even though Halloween 1978 was filmed in the spring. All right. Enough said about Nosferatu. I think if you want to watch it, it's your thing, and you would know by now. If you need to watch something from the 1920s, there are worse things to watch. All right. Or 1930s, The Black Cat. Now, The Black Cat is Snakey's favorite movie. No, that's not true. It is often like teamed up with The Raven because it's two Edgar Allan Poe movies that star both Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff. I personally like The Black Cat a little more. The Raven's alright. I don't really like Bela Lugosi in it. And I like the Black Cat a little more because it's kind of satanic, which is kind of cool. And it's really dark. There's like bodies in glass chambers, and there's just like people getting like totally. It's just really dark. It's a very dark movie for the 1930s. Probably the most dark I've seen from that era. And of course, there are good movies like The Mummy and Frankenstein and Dracula, of course. But I decided to go with this one just because I think it's the most interesting and probably the best. If you were going to watch 1930s movies, I think you would even be able to handle this one because it's also very short. Most movies from this time period are, except for like Son of Frankenstein. That was like an hour and 40 minutes, which I guess isn't that long. Anyways. And then the 40s, The Wolfman. It's pretty much the obvious choice. There's other good ones, a lot of the other Universal ones, but I think The Wolfman is up there for my favorite Universal horror movie. I still think I like Creature from the Black Lagoon a little more, but that's not from the 40s, that's from the 50s. But The Wolfman's good. It has likable characters, cool atmosphere. I remember when I was very young, this one I still liked even when I was like 10. Well, back then it was hard for me to really enjoy movies like this. Like I'd get really bored of black and white, not black and white per se, but just movies that weren't modern. Like if it was before the 80s, it usually didn't keep my attention as well. But this one did, so there's that. So if you need to show an old horror movie to a 10-year-old kid, which I know there's a high demand for that, show them this one. Oh man. Snakey, what do you think of The Wolfman? He loves it. Or she loves it. I'm still not quite sure. Snakey loves it. 50s. Now, I did just mention Creature from the Black Lagoon. That is not my favorite 50s one. The 50s may be my favorite decade for horror. There's a lot of the really cheap movies from this era aren't as good as the very cheap movies from like the 80s and 70s. But it's still... But I'd say, like, as far as consistency goes, you're going to find the most amount of good movies in the 50s as far as horror movies go. Some people call them worse. They're more leaning towards sci-fi, you know, a lot of them. And that's true for some, but I mean, there's still, like, William Castle was making movies that were like ghost movies and The Tingler, although that might be the 60s. But yeah, the 50s, my favorite one is, of course, The Blob. And I don't know if you can see the poster in the shot, but that is my favorite 50s horror movie. It was the horror movie that got me into horror. Saw it when I was 6, only had my eyes open for about 2 minutes of it. I was terrified out of my mind. It's just a very atmospheric, very charming movie. And I like it a lot. You should watch it. I know some people may not be, like as far as 50s movies go, if you've never watched them before, I think The Blob is a good place to start. Besides that, maybe Creature from the Black Lagoon or Invasion of the Body Snatchers. But those ones are a little slower, I think. The Blob has like crap happening in the first like couple minutes. The blob gets on the old man's hand like that. A meteorite crashes to Earth. Some of these other ones, it's like exposition about crap that goes on, but doesn't actually go anywhere. It's just a lot of exposition until and like kind of evidence of a monster, but doesn't really show anything. No, the blob is shown quite a lot in this movie, and that's pretty awesome. And the blob is a very creative monster. I know a lot of people have said that, but I'd say it's one of the more creative monsters out there. Yeah. Alright, the 60s. I've been making this video for 17 hours. Just kidding. But the 60s. Let me tell you about the 60s. This is not, I think this is a good decade for Vincent Price movies. Like I mentioned, The Tingler, Last Man on Earth, and I'm sure there's more. I can't think of it off the top of my head. But the best one, it has to go today. It's Night of the Living Dead. Night of the Living Dead, I don't think it's the most influential horror movie of all time. I think that still goes to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, especially for modern horror, recently anyways. A lot of the grittier horror, like Rob Zombie type stuff, very influenced by Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But the best one, but Night of the Living Dead is also incredibly influential because probably the biggest subgenre of horror that has lasted super long is zombies. And I love zombies. Like, I know they're done so much, but I'll watch a zombie movie whenever. Like, I am totally down. Like, that is by far, I don't know if it's my favorite genre, but it's because it's been done so much and it has been done poorly, but it's probably the easiest genre to make entertaining. The one thing about zombies is that it's hard to make them scary. Very few movies can do that. But I do think, as far as like dark atmosphere goes with zombies, you're not going to find anything better than Night of the Living Dead. The sequels are all very good. I think Day of the Dead used to be my favorite, but it might be Night of the Living Dead now, just because it has that kind of Halloween charm to me that like I love to find in horror movies. What do you think of Night of the Living Dead, Snakey? If you bite my face during this video, I might get more than 2 views. 70s. 70s, here's one that could be debated on whether or not it's a horror movie. I think it's horrific and it's very gloomy, so I'm gonna count it. Of course, there's Jaws, which is a very great movie. I'm not saying it's not great. It's a fantastic movie. I can watch that one once every year and be fine. There's The Exorcist, which I think is a smidgen overrated. I think I gave it like 3 stars, not 4 stars, because I don't know. But I don't know, Zombie 2 or Zombie, you know, the Lucio Fulci movie. If that was 79 or 80, but if that's one, that's very close. That's one of my all-time favorite movies. But no, number 1 is what many people consider probably not to be a horror movie. It's definitely sci-fi first, but I think it counts. If it doesn't count, then put Zombie there. If Zombie's not an 80s horror movie, then put Jaws there. It goes to Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The remake with Jeff Goldblum, Donald Sutherland, and a lot of other people. Leonard Nimoy. You know I love Star Trek. Sorry, this video is not about Star Trek. Stop looking at my hands, Snakey. Don't bite me. Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It's a very creative, very dark, very surreal kind of feeling. Not very surreal. People like build up its surreality a lot, but I think it's very. It's still a very normal movie with very normal characters. And maybe like the cinematography can be a little strange sometimes, but for the most part, it's very, very blockbuster. It's very, very good-looking movie to look at. It's very, very beautiful cinematography. It's very intense, very dark. One thing I will say about it that might be a slight turnoff is that it's about people who are very tired, and that can make you tired. I feel like you know how like yawning is contagious. Seeing people tired and like not very energetic and whatever, and just horrified out of their mind, it can kind of be contagious. So this movie might make you tired, but stressed out at the same time. Very unique, like a panic attack. All right, that's again great movie. I highly recommend. 4 stars. Check it out. Right, Snakey? Snakey, what do you think about Invasion of the Body Snatchers? You wouldn't care. You don't even have a soul if you got replaced by a snatcher. The 80s. Oh man. But now, this one's a very tough one. And this one probably changes the most out of all of them. The blob is always the 50s. The 60s is probably always going to be Night of the Living Dead. 70s changes a bit too. But 80s, this one's really hard. There's a lot of really great movies that are very similar, but great. I love Friday the 13th, all of them. That is by far my favorite slasher series. People, I get crap for that sometimes, because people are like, what about the Halloween series or the Nightmare on Elm Street series? Nightmare on Elm Street is probably my least favorite besides the Child's Play ones, out of the big ones. But anyways, Friday the 13th is my favorite, but that doesn't make the cut because they're not all as great as some of the other ones. Night of the Creeps is also, it used to be my favorite movie of all time. I do think there's a slight pacing issue in that movie. Besides that, it's great, but it's an amazing movie, and I'll watch it every year, during October. But it does have slight, like between the second and third act, it kind of feels like, okay, how much longer is this movie? So that one would have made the cut, but it did not. So my favorite horror movie of the 80s, without further ado, is The Fly. This is probably my favorite movie of all time. Just because it has such great acting. All the characters in it. Gina Davis, Jeff Goldblum, and that's funny because he's now in 2 movies so far on my list. I don't think he's in it anymore after this. I don't know if he did any horror movies really after The Fly even. I'm probably wrong about that. Oh yeah, I'm wrong about that. But he is phenomenal. You really care about the characters in this. It's a very interesting, fully engaging movie the whole time. You're wondering what happens next, and it's very rewatchable. I can watch this movie probably twice a year if I had to, which is a lot for me. And still love it. That's what I need to be clear. Like, I can watch some movies like 2 times a year, and then it's kind of just generic. Or like it kind of just gets like a passive watching eventually. This one I have to stay fully engaged the whole time. Every scene is memorable. Every scene is quotable. The finale is horrifyingly amazing. Another one that I do love is Videodrome. It's not. I think the problem with that one kind of lies in it's just not as good as The Fly. It's a little more surreal, which is fine, but it's not as good overall. But The Fly is great. I know a lot of people talk about it already, but literally, if you haven't seen The Fly, you owe yourself to watch this one. I hate body horror. Body horror is my least favorite genre by far. Even like, I hate found footage and everything, but if that's a genre. But body horror is the one that just grosses me out the most. I don't like it. Even Leprechaun 4, I didn't like that one because of the weird body horror. That one wasn't too bad, but like, there's a lot of movies, a lot of my least favorite horror movies are body horror because I think they're gross. And I'm not talking about like torture porn. Torture porn, I love the Saw movies, but like a lot of other ones, I just like, this is gross. I don't want to see this. It's not fun. But The Fly, I don't know what it is about this movie, and David Cronenberg in general. I don't know how he gets it right with body horror, but this one's cool. And I think it's Snakey's favorite horror movie too, besides The Last Man on Earth, of course. Actually, I think he's only seen Snakey's only seen like a couple horror movies. You saw Friday the 13th Part 5, or no, you saw Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, which a lot of people think is the worst one. Or no, it was the 4th one. Which one has the cockroach? That one. I didn't like that you were watching that one. That one made me nervous that you were gonna start acting like Freddy Krueger. Anyways. 90s. Big shout out to Candyman. Love the soundtrack. It's not perfect. That's what I'll say about Candyman. I think probably it's just not very. There's some writing issues, I think. I don't love the ending, the very ending, like the very last scene. I think it's really dumb. And I mean, it was a very hard scene to act and everything, but it was dumb. But 90s, it will go to Blair Witch, which is the scariest movie I've ever seen. And it's interesting because I talked to a lot of, because I've shown this movie to a lot of people. I've seen it like 4 times this year, which is too much. It's not that good. But it is a lot of like intermediate or like kind of like entry level horror people who haven't seen a lot of horror movies, but like kind of like horror, don't think it's scary. And then intermediate people, same thing. But most people I know who are like obsessed with horror and like love horror, like Stephen King, for example, said it was like the scariest movie he ever saw. I think he turned it off anyways. I don't know if he was completely scared. And a lot of my friends who have seen more than like, you know, if you've seen more than like 100 or 150 horror movies, you I think usually you're like, this one is uniquely scary. Your jump scares there's no jump scares really in this whole movie. But I think not true, I won't say that, but for a lot of horror fans, jump scares don't do it for them after a certain point. Like, you get impressed by a jump scare every now and then. Like, I know a lot of people are a fan of the Insidious series because those have some very good jump scares. One of the most I ever jumped was in Insidious 3, I think. But that's not saying much because I'm a very jumpy person. But that one made me jump at a very obvious scene that shouldn't have made me jump. That's the window scene, if you guys know what I'm talking about. Blair Witch is very scary. Very well done. The characters aren't likable, but I think that's okay. I think that kind of works with the story. I think it's funny sometimes. It's very dark, both figuratively and literally. Like the whole movie, like the camera's shaking, you see static, but you don't necessarily see anything else. And that's some of the scariest stuff. That's what makes it hard to look at the screen the first time you watch it. You're like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen next. Blair Witch has been talked about a lot, but it is fantastic, and I do recommend for anyone who's a big fan of the genre. If you're not a big fan, you won't be impressed by it. You won't be impressed by it, but watch it if you're a big fan, and I think you'll be impressed by how chilling it is. You know, I reiterate, a lot of people I've talked to say it's not scary at all, and I understand where they're coming from because they're expecting like a spooky monster jump out of the closet type stuff, and that doesn't happen. But it's very like makes you feel isolated. It's just very chilling. That is the best word to describe it, I think. Alright, 2000s. 28 Days Later. I think all these movies are 4 stars, except for Nosferatu. Just to say that real quick. Nosferatu's not. I don't recommend that one. You don't need to watch that unless you really like. If you are trying to be the best horror movie fan ever, watch it. But other than that, it's good. This one, you have the Saw movies, which I love. My favorite Saw is probably the first one, but the 6th one's also very good. You have Shaun of the Dead, which is very good. But I think the cake does go to another British zombie movie. Well, zombie. It's debatable whether or not they're zombies. They are not undead flesh eaters. It's hard. It's hard to make a horror movie, zombie movie scary, and I think as far as scary zombies go, this is up there. It's very like, you see these zombies and you're like, this is bad. Like World War Z is a little over the top, but this one is like a realistic level of these zombies could happen, and it's just people who are crazy, The characters are interesting. I don't know if I'd call them likable, but they're interesting, which could be more important. Like, is the Joker from the new Joker movie likable? I don't think so, but he's very captivating and interesting. I wouldn't want to be friends with Joaquin Phoenix in that movie. And then the characters here, I would be friends with maybe, but anyways, what am I talking about? Very scary. If you're a fan of zombies, if you're a fan of the genre, by the way, if you're a fan of movies, watch 28 Days Later. It's a very well done movie. Very scary, very unique. It's dark. It has a very dark tone, and the cinematography is very unique. I can't think of a lot of movies that do anything else like this, but that has cinematography like this. Alright, 2010s. I'll admit, I'm probably not as well versed as a lot of other people are in 2010s. I do prefer the more, I wouldn't say camping because I feel like that's disrespectful, but like more fun horror movies. These ones more depend on like jump scares and stuff, which is fine. It's good for when you have girls. Don't try to kiss me while watching a horror movie. I'm watching the dang horror movie. Unless I've seen it before, then maybe. I'm dying over here. Alright, 2010s. Not a huge fan of, like I said. A lot of cheap movies, a lot of generic ghost movies. And ghost movies can be good, but like, you know, they're very forgettable. And they're very all the same. But they're usually entertaining. I will say, like, I'm not usually bored during movies. Not a lot of honorable mentions, to be honest. But probably my favorite one is Crawl. Sam Raimi produced. You know it's good when Sam Raimi produces it. I thought that whole movie, I was literally clenched, just horrified of what was gonna happen next. And every time, like, you think like something is like maybe it'll be okay, it goes bad, and like you just don't know what's gonna happen next, and then like things happen that you would not expect. You would not expect. You're worried that the dog's gonna die. You're worried that you're worried about the two main characters. They're likable characters. I don't know if they're interesting, but they are like. It's just very scary. I'm not scared of crocodiles. I'm not scared of reptiles in general. I'm scared of spiders. Terrified of spiders. So, big ass spider, that movie scared the crap out of me. No, that's not true. Big ass spider made me. It was hard for me to look at the screen, even though it was like a very cheesy movie. I was like, oh, I cannot look at this. I do love that movie though. That might be an honorable shout out actually. That's my honorable shout out. Big ass spider. My favorite is Crawl. I'm not afraid of alligators, but this one was very effective, very intense, and I recommend this to anyone who can handle this type of movie. You're not going to be bored. I guarantee 1,000%. And Sam Raimi, I do love Sam Raimi. He did produce The Grudge, which was not very good. But he also made the Evil Dead series. So, you know, keep an eye out for what he did. Obviously, I think enough people have talked about Sam Raimi at this point that I don't need to bring him up. But yeah, so that's it. So, quick recap. Nosferatu, The Black Cat, The Wolfman, The Blob, Night of the Living Dead, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, The Fly, Blair Witch Project, 28 Days Later, and finally, Crawl. Well, thank you very much. Say goodbye, Snakey. You're not waving goodbye.